All right. Oh.
To episode 15 of the Map 5 podcast, the podcast that brings you all the news from Tier 2 and beyond. You may notice that we are a little bit different in our lineup today. That is, of course, because it is Theymerpalooza. That's the German word for it. Theymerpalooza, day one, and we have Firinn from Altiora Gaming joining us. Unfortunately, Billy has been taken ill at the last second, so it is just the four of us on screen today. Firinn, welcome to the broadcast. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm Firinn. I run this organization, Altiora, and outside of that, I'm also like a little bit of a generalist. I dabble in a bunch of things, and it's like an absolute pleasure to be on here and be chatting to you.
Well, it's very kind of you to give up your time to come and talk to us. I know that Altiora are in the middle of trying to organise their own Pride Cup at the minute, and things might have been, a little bit stressful today, so we appreciate you taking the time. So, in order to get things moving quickly and give you a little bit of a chance to rest, we're going to try and blast through our news items today. And I've just realised that actually we've got a lot of these that haven't been picked by any to talk about yet.
I told Jeff to take whatever he wanted, and I'll just take the
Okay,
the
well, look, let's blast off here with a chance to introduce. We actually finally have a graphic for this. It is, of course, the Natter news segment.
Yes,
favorite recurring character here on the Map 5 podcast. A couple of bits of Natter news here. First of that being that the project that Natter is involved with, Rank Up, are having their first boot camp. So that's going to be June 30th, a 3-week-long boot camp, which is Natter and, of course, other contenders coach, John _. Follow the link on screen there. We'll retweet this after the broadcast, so you can go and have a look at that one and see if that's maybe right for you.
I'll retweet this right now. Boom.
Yeah, go on, get it done.
Boom.
And the other one is, the other one we can throw directly over to Ethan, as he appears to have selected this in the downtime.
Oh yeah, because I had a really good joke about this in our call time. So, so we had the Natter Kitten Cup, and they've made this a 1v1 tournament, which I think is shocking. I think something called the Kitten Cup in an esports community surely has to be a 2v2 tournament, right? You're like, missed opportunity. Let's be real. And we had some good. We made like you can force people to play on different named accounts. You've got a couple of suggestions. We won't say the one that I suggested in call time, but we should move
zoom
on
out a little bit because Saturday, June 26th, is not a thing. Yeah.
I think they do make this correction here in
there
the
we
post.
go. June 25th.
Oh, they even made a new graphic for it too. There we go.
Oh,
That's the appropriate day.
Okay.
There we go. So the Kitten Cup is on a Saturday as well, so you're going to have all of the available e-daters as well. I just don't know why it's not 2v2 tournament. I'm disappointed. Natter, come on.
Well, I mean,
should have read the room better.
Yeah, Natter has done, I think, in recent memory, a Farah Mercy tournament. Maybe he thought that was we've done the 2v2 effectively. Time to move on and do the 1v1. Yeah. Regardless,
I'm just disappointed. I think missed opportunity, but it's a good cause. It's a good tournament, and it's Natter, so we gotta put it on the stream, right? So yeah,
exactly.
rules are rules.
we are like maybe 2 or 3 episodes away from just doing an entire episode of whatever Natter has tweeted. We'll just do a rundown, like a rewatch podcast
Yes,
of Natter's Twitter.
of Natter's Twitter feed.
You could do like you know, like people like do like content compilations after a couple of episodes, like Natter news compilation, like after.
I like it.
Every
By the way,
weeks,
I did get Natter's permission to use his logo on this, so in case there's any concerns out there, it is official, it is sanctioned.
But
by the big brain himself.
Lawyer-filled viewership just waiting to drag us down for having used Natter's logo.
All right, moving forward, we do have an Overwatch LAN coming up this summer, put on by Will English IV. So that one's going to be July 30th and 31st. I believe it's right at the end of Summer Series A.
Roughly, yeah.
Yeah, I think he actually put out a tweet a little while after that to the effect of, oh, cool, we got these dates, and actually that works out really nicely for the Overwatch LAN. That should be good. He's run a few of these. I think he's by and large got this pretty much locked down now. It's going to be at one of the Belong arenas. I'm a big fan of the Belong arenas. I did a lot of work for them back in the UK when I still lived there. So yeah, it should be good fun. Keep your eyes peeled for more info as and when it happens.
I know he tweeted about they're expecting, I think fingers crossed, but high expectations to get the 32 team mark, which would knock the prize pool up to 2K. So
yeah, that'd be great.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, it'd be awesome. Always love to see a good LAN. Potentially the last LAN on Overwatch 1.
Phil, you want to talk about that?
I don't think it's appropriate to talk about what's going on behind the scenes here.
It's not.
We'll just move on with this one. So this one, you actually we have a bone to pick with you as a podcast here, Ethan, because you plat chatted us on this news point. Like this announcement came
plat chatted us
a couple of days after our last.
I told you I was doing it though. I told you that
it's fun to drag you over the coals here. So, but yeah, by all means, go and talk about this.
Oh, this is really cool. So essentially, we were in Contenders Korea last season. My organisation.
And who's we, Ethan?
Yeah, Incendia, my organisation. I talked about them every episode randomly. And we were in Contenders Korea last season. Essentially, going into this season of Contenders, we had no projects up until about 10 days ago. Now we have 2.
Great.
All right. Didn't mean to say that. If you didn't catch the reaction. I was meant to say no of this one, and I'm not a little bit shook.
Spill the tea out here.
Right, so, but essentially how this came about.
Spill your own tea.
It's fine.
Yeah. So essentially what happened was got contacted by the head coach, COE, who had a really good working relationship before with, because our team last season was contracted. They were all paid each month for the competition time of Contenders Korea. And they were like, can we use the Incendia branding, essentially? And can we represent the Incendia brand? I went, okay, sure. We had to come to some sort of agreement. I'm like, we can't pay. They're uncontracted. So any organizations who are able to go and pay, come and take this roster. I want what's best for them. They're good people, good players, and work really hard, if demonstrated by wins against Gen G and Team CC last year. And I'm glad to have them with us for however long it is necessary. And good roster, a couple of players, from XO2 Academy and O2 Blast. And also, look, everyone loves Akash. So, yeah, that's a big thing for me. Also having Akash back as well. And if you're looking out for a player, Sungwoo is very, very, very good. Or, sorry, Aster is very, very, very good. So, look out for them this season. Additionally, with this, we made some staff additions, which we can talk about. We have user intel for content coming in. Very passionate guy in the scene who did a really cool announcement video. We have Elijah coming back to help us with some general manager stuff between, I guess I can say, both of our projects now. We have someone called Fuck It Super, or as I know them, Frosty, coming in for social medias, and another person who didn't do their announcement because they were meant
sorry, just rewind. Did you say Fuck It Sumin Su?
No, Fuck It Super.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, different person. And then also we have one other social media person who didn't announce it, or they just didn't want to. That's okay. Who is an ex-Contenders Trials main tank called Adam. He used to play for HSL in Europe. So yeah,
Oh.
that's where we're at staffing wise. I'm really excited for this project, and yeah, very very smiley because it was looking pretty doom and gloom until 10 days ago.
Yeah, and we're giving the credit there to Natter for that one. I know you're not watching the preview, but the Natter news thing came back up on screen.
That was my fault. That's my S tier producing full
I
effect.
wish Natter would talk about my team. No, it doesn't love me enough.
But no, that's really cool, Ethan. We're all very happy for you.
Yeah, but I've only been talking about that exclusively the past couple of days, and I will continue to
be
do
pretty
so.
insufferable.
What?
Well, I look forward to seeing what they've got in store. Looking forward to some Korean contenders, no doubt.
Yeah.
We'll have another Korean contenders roster coming up soon, but before that, let's talk about some NA Collegiate, as we do have an announcement coming in from David Kurt. Redbird Esports is hiring for a coach for both Rocket League and League of Legends, and this is, though these games aren't necessarily within the purview of this podcast, this is just a big move for collegiate overall. And obviously, Redbirds are a big player in the Overwatch collegiate scene. So I thought this was definitely worth mentioning. And I feel like this is just an important step in pushing forward the legitimacy of collegiate esports. And so, big props to them for properly paying their people, kind of following that trend. And really allowing for full careers in collegiate coaching. Yeah.
And being open with how much they're paying people, which helps other people in collegiate esports to go, we should probably be paying around that amount too, right? Kind of stops the acceptance of underpaying staff as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the other thing is, if you look at the way the League of Legends coach position is 21 hours a week, Rocket League is full time. Those two values are commensurate across the game. And that means we can kind of expect that's what the Overwatch coaching staff are getting as well here. And that's great for the scene. We like people that we like making money. That's super cool and fun.
Agreed.
Yeah.
It's a shame we don't make any.
Well, yeah.
Showcasters, that's in our lot.
Yikes.
Chance could be a fine thing indeed.
Oh, dear.
Okay, we are moving topics again here. Recently, Harrisburg University Esports announced their Invitational. This is the third year they've run this. And it's the first year it's not just been an Overwatch program. So they've had this a couple of different times and a couple of different formats. But yeah, they've now got an online qualifier followed by a live in-person main event coming up. Or it's actually July through September this thing runs between registration and the actual final event. I know we're all super excited to see what that ends up looking like and who gets involved. If anybody's watching, I do only live 90 miles from Harrisburg University. Just take that into account when you're looking for staff, please. That'd be greatly appreciated.
I'll take a bus up there if I can cast a land.
Yeah.
I will hitchhike up there if I can cast a land. I'm just saying.
Just fly me over. Look, I would love to cast a sort of event. Unfortunately, it costs at least $1,200 more than any other caster, not including Reds.
Worth every penny.
I don't think so, but especially when there's so many great American talent out there right now. And British talent in America.
Thank you. I appreciate being included in that one.
You know how much I've out for you already. Come on.
I know, friend. I know. Let's keep rattling on through because I'm aware that we are a little bit holding Firinn hostage here. You will sit through our news items. So the next one, Get Amazed. As you know, we're all pretty big fans of Get Amazed here and have been
pretty amazed
for them for a long time now. Announced he is still with Team Pets, but is putting together a passion project, a personal project on the side with some really interesting requirements for someone who is an assistant coach, someone who is curious and professional. I've met a lot of people in the Overwatch space. I know some curious people. But that's more curious ha-ha than curious interesting. And professionalism is also very difficult to find, so best of luck in finding that. But it looks like he's already got a lot of applicants here, so I'm interested to see what this ends up being, because I think getting a chance to work with Get Amazed should be quite a good opportunity for any aspiring coach.
I love the comment here, how he takes the time to go in and actually say, hey, I've received a lot of applicants, and I will read every single one, and since, there's examples given, and he's going through and acknowledging all the examples that have been provided and saying, I'll get back to you as soon as he can. I just thought that was really cool. That's a very kind aspect of professionalism.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more than like actual companies will give you if you fail a job interview.
Yeah, sad but true.
Mood.
It's good to have that transparency, because otherwise you think you're applying, just like, they didn't read my message, right? It'd be quite upsetting, but no, you have that sort of transparency, and then you can take a weight off your shoulders as well. Good for the mental.
Moving forward, we do have another I don't know how I got this topic because I don't speak German. But
so this is the main reason I included this in the show, because I thought Billy was going to be here, and I knew that he would enjoy overpronouncing all of this German.
Just hit translate tweet.
Where do I hit that?
I think the important thing here is that it's a community tournament. So those of you that don't know Noserino, pretty big streamer in Germany. He has sort of moved over and done some English language stuff because, as most people on the continent seem to, he speaks perfectly fluent English. But he has a very large and very active community over in Germany, and he's having a beta Overwatch tournament the start of next month, in point of fact. Yeah, that should be good. It's not often that we get to talk much about what's going on in other language regions of this game.
Yeah, we don't really do that too much. I mean, we've talked a bit about the French community when talking about Peps at some point, but nothing really in depth now.
And of course, we'll be on Overwatch 2.
Yes.
So it's an important thing to note if that wasn't obvious enough with the Junker Queen being on the promo there.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Okay, we are nearing the end of our news segment here. We don't have all of the information on this, exactly what this is going to look like, but Akash, main tank player, is gearing up to put on what he's called a big and beautiful tournament, specifically aimed at players. Players go £250 plus with a 1k prize pool. We don't know if this is going to be broadcast. We don't know if this is going to be like we don't even know if it's really going to happen. Like, he says he's serious, but organizing a tournament as a Firinn, I'm sure you will agree, is difficult. Work. Yeah. I think both myself and Billy went in and went, "Oh, we meet that criteria. Would you like some casters?" So we will be keeping an eye on that one, because I think that could be a lot of fun. It should make for some interesting rosters as well. Like, I think there is this idea of like, yes, a lot of gamers are big people because we don't move much, and whilst that's true in some cases, like, it's not everybody, not by a long stretch. Like, so there won't be many like established teams coming into this.
I would say like that we've kind of moved past that stereotype. I would say like a lot of gamers you would suspect are like overly thin, right?
Scrawny.
Yeah, you see a lot of them.
Yeah, ocean-esque.
I'm actually gonna put a mate on, mate. If I stood up, you would see that. I put on a better weight than last year at least. Thank you.
Congratulations.
I love the idea of a tournament to celebrate body positivity and loving yourself.
Yeah.
Like that's an awesome idea. It's not something I don't think we've ever seen before in the Overwatch space. I can't speak for other titles. So I mean, just what a cool idea. And I gotta give a round of applause to Akash for even dreaming this up and trying to push it forward and to create a whole tournament around it with a decent prize pool to boot. So yeah, definitely worth talking about and keeping an eye on. So we'll keep you updated once we have more details on it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Ocean, I think you're up.
I am up. Have you got it on the screen? Because I've got a big smile on my face. Because Talon have given us
sensitive content.
Yep.
Talon have given us some additions to their roster. We looked at Talon's roster a little bit ago and thought, that's a bit weird, isn't it? Didn't look quite finished, and here are the finishing parts. I think Talon have always been a team where they get results because they're so good at developing talent. And I admire them a lot for that, because that's like sort of similar to Incendia's goal, developing talent and progressing them. And that's what Talon have done. I mean, they've also competed at the top in a lot of games as well themselves. But I really like it. And speaking of, and the reason I kind of bring up Incendia with this one is Top Dragon is here. One of our superstars from last season, Korean Contenders, is actually on this roster, and that really excites me and gives me a little bit of validation. Unfortunately, we never had any players go up to Overwatch League from last season, but we had 2 players go to T1 and a player go to Talon, and going from what was a tier 3 Korean team to a tier 2 Korean team, and now going to T1 or Talon, which are major organizations in esports, is a lot bigger of a move than people would think. Like, a lot of people in the West would look at this as going, oh yeah, you're going from another contenders team to another. Yeah, these boys will be getting paid, you know?
Great.
Yeah, they'll be getting paid good monthly salaries, and they'll be representing a major brand that's worth millions. You wouldn't be doing that in the West, unfortunately. It's just how it is. But that's a very big move for them. So it kind of gives us a little bit of validation now that we've had Justice Serve as a manager go to Panthera, a Peach and Frong go to T1, and we've had not Tier 1 but T1, and Top Dragon go to Talon. So those are like steps that we can be really, really happy with and say that we're guiding talent forward, which is our entire company's goal. And that makes me really smiley. So I'm actually a little bit more smiley about Top Dragon going to Talon than us announcing our own roster, because me seeing them with me is kind of like sad, because I want them to go further than
sure.
With me.
You don't want them stuck down here with you, and I can sympathise with that.
Yeah. No, genuinely, that's how I feel about that.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about a team that has taken first place in both of the Korean Contenders events, or that were featuring those kind of teams, featuring O2 Blast and T1 and Jinji. Talon took first place in both of the 10 special matches that we saw back in March and April. And the 3 new pickups. We saw everybody else in this roster that's currently on your screen, aside from those.
Slay's a player I forgot to talk about. Slay was at Ground Zero at one point, right?
Played in Australian Contenders.
My notes, good player, really good player. Like, mechanically, good, really good. And I think a lot of players in the West know a bit about Slay, just because they're so mechanically good. So look out for that.
Okay.
Yeah, Tugan, I could not find anything on. So Tugan, I have
I'm
no
in the
idea.
Scene
I have no idea where they found
I
Tugan.
personally don't know much either. I did ask a couple of questions to a couple of people, but that usually means they're cracked out of ranks, and that's scary.
Right.
Yeah, that's what that usually means, right?
Well, I found like Knife competed in Open Division in Korea. It's called Open Test. Under T1 rookies. Seonjun
a lot of these people come
played
from
in Contender Specific.
O2 Academy and T1 rookies. That's something we'll see, because they had some really good talents that, because you aren't denied a team in 2 teams in the same Contenders region, you know, for obvious reasons, you'll see a lot of these talents get picked up by other teams.
Attack is also one to keep an eye on. Attack is the only returning member from last year, where Talon took second place both seasons.
I actually want to talk about Attack. Just 1 minute, one quick minute on Attack, because Attack
I'll give you 30
is
seconds.
1 minute. Attack is a player, you know, who is up and down and up and down. Like, sometimes you see them as potentially, you know, the next one to go up to Overwatch, like, especially in like the off-tank role. And sometimes you're like, I'm not quite sure that they're even Contenders level, right? Like, that's what Attack is. If Attack brings consistency to their game, they'll be a big player this season. I want to see that. That's a thing to highlight, something to watch if you're watching Korean Contenders this season.
All right,
Okay.
I'm impressed.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Was that in a minute?
That was less than a minute. Well done.
Yeah, that's what I'm impressed by.
We're going to drag it out to a minute by complimenting you on getting it in under a minute. But we finally, towards the back of the news items, we actually have something that we would like Firinn to properly weigh in on, because we mentioned this last week. This weekend is Altiora Pride Cup. So, Firinn, why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So Altiora is doing Pride Cup for the second year now. We did it last year and we thought it was a really fun event, so we're doing it again. And it's essentially just a tournament which is intended to be only for like LGBTQA plus players. So the idea is that we can like really showcase LGBTQA plus talent, and we can show people like how much of it there is in the scene, and like how there really are like a lot of like very, very good LGBT players who are like, you know, available to be picked up or to be like developed. And so that's like one of the goals. And then obviously the other goal here is this year we're raising money for charities. So we're trying to raise money for this charity called the LGBTQ Freedom Fund, which is a bail fund. And typically we try to like really vet our charities and make sure that like we're raising money for causes that are like going to do like a lot of good with like a lot of evidence of impact and stuff. And bail funds we think are like really effective, because essentially it's a fund where in the US, if somebody is in like immigration detention, for instance, so like let's say like they've immigrated into the country and they're like awaiting a hearing to see whether they can claim asylum or whether they like immigrated illegally. they're often like kept in jail unless they can pay like a specific amount of money to say that they're going to make their court dates. And a lot of those people, like the probability that they actually will make their court dates is like very, very high, but because they can't put up that specific amount of money, they're kept in jail. And that like creates very, very bad outcomes because it means that like ahead of their court date, they're not able to like talk to a lawyer and like spend time at home with their families and like really prepare in the best way for that case. So what bail funds do is they put up that money just so that, and that has like an immediate positive impact of allowing that person to get out of detention. But then the more important thing is like when that person does attend their court dates, the money is returned. So whenever you donate money to a bail fund, that money gets used like again and again and again, and just continues like improving people's lives, which is like a very efficient, very like effective way of doing charity. So it's very much like a charity that's going to help like the most vulnerable LGBTQ populations, like especially like immigrants, people of color, and we thought that was like something that's really important. So we're hopefully going to raise a bunch of money for them and also like showcase some amazing like LGBT talent. It was really fun last year, so definitely tune into the streams this weekend. We're only allowed to stream when Overwatch League isn't streaming, so we'll be streaming like in between the Overwatch League matches. But then the matches that we're not allowed to stream, we're actually going to be recording them, and then we should be releasing those as VODs later during the week. So definitely like stay tuned for those.
Yeah, fantastic. One other thing, where can people contribute to this donation-wise if they want to do that?
So there's a Tiltify link in, if you look at the original tweet where we announced this, if you click on the handbook, the Tiltify link is in there. We're going to be tweeting it out separately, sort of like when the stream starts. And there'll also be like a command on the stream where if you do like !donate, you'll be able to get the link. So like if you just scroll down to, I think there's an important links section. Yeah, right there. And you'll see the Tiltify link there. So we are going to be tweeting that out like specifically. Just like when we think it's going to get like the most attention, so we'll be tweeting that out like as the tournament starts, and hopefully like do donate like if you can afford to donate, because I think it's a really good cause.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll be sure to amplify that as much as we can here as well. Wishing you all the success in that one, because yeah, in terms of like not just picking a charity, but picking a charity that has such a big impact, I think that's phenomenal work, and we're more than happy to do even what little bit we can to support that. Good work, all told.
Dropping that link in chat. We'll also have it in description. Yeah, we'll do our best to get that out there.
Hell yeah.
Cool. So I think we've not even mentioned this because my view is this is such a big topic, it deserves its own episode, which I think we'll probably do next week.
Yeah,
but we do finally have the Overwatch Contenders Path to Pro format update here. I think we can get like a Cliff Notes version of this in, but it definitely needs picking apart properly next week.
I want to quickly bring up that I think that the announcement was poorly done. I think that the timing of the announcement, the actual statement said, on a specific date. The only time it was that date was in America and on a global product where you have 5 regions, only one.
Apologies, my audio. Okay. Sorry, I just had a tech issue here that messed with the audio.
It's the difficulty of having a product.
Well, then you shouldn't have advertised it as 21.
It's the problem of having a global problem. Come on, global product effectively managed from the west coast of NA is that like it does put it towards the back end of the day for a lot of people.
Why not just put a timeline? Why not put a timeline?
I completely understand like why you might be a little frustrated with that. I think in the grand scheme of things, I don't feel like it's the most impactful aspect of that. But we can maybe hash that out a bit more on.
I'm severely unhappy about it.
Oh yeah, no, we got that impression.
No, I'm not happy. You see my face?
My audio cut out, which means
just thinking about it.
Stream's audio cut out, but yeah, essentially the timing of it was not conducive to anybody else in the world except for NA. Is what Ocean's bottom point.
Yeah,
was.
But you had like journalists in Korea where esports is a big thing, right? Staying up because they said a date not a time on said date. If they said like 4 p.m. PST, the people would, not have this problem. But when you've got journalists in different regions staying up to give this news, then that's a problem. I think there should have been a time with the thing, and I think to put a date and then only have it for one of your regions, I think it's very selfish and stubborn. It's a global product. Act like it's one.
Okay, your objections have been noted and will be held against you in future discussions.
It's a global product. Act like it.
Yeah. Firinn, we actually had like a bit of a realization coming into the fight, because the way we know Altiora Gaming is we know Altiora Gaming as they're a contenders team. That's clearly the biggest part of what you guys do, and we'll get into this like a little bit more in the following section. But as someone involved with, was the founder of Altiora, in point of fact, and that you have a contenders team, is the path to pro meeting your expectations, or is this maybe like a little bit too granular for someone who is more of a like higher level figure in the org?
Well, I don't want to say like too much like specific. I think there's like some aspects that are really exciting, and some aspects that could like definitely be improved. So for instance, like I think a lot of people were quite disappointed by the announcement that it's going to be on game battles, because a lot of us have had like bad experiences with game battles, but like obviously we'll see how it gets handled, and see if
that needs to go
they
under
improve
topics
on
for
that
next
feedback.
week.
What's I say?
I was saying that needs to go under our topics for next week, because that's a mistake. Yeah.
I think there's like obviously I definitely get the impression that like there's people at like Blizzard trying to do good things, and like possibly like they might be not able to do like everything they want to do. It's something that like I don't know how I would have like managed it myself if like I was like running this, because obviously you want to balance, like it's a new game, you want to like potentially like let more people from sort of like tier 3 get a chance to like move up into contenders, but you also don't want to sort of like betray like commitments that were made like to like 2021 contenders teams, and so that's like something that they just have to balance, right? And I think like trying to like open it up into this like big like 64 team bracket before like closing it back down into like an 18 contenders, like at its heart, like that's a good idea. I think there's like just a lot of like aspects of like execution that a lot of people have some issues with.
Yeah, I think that's probably quite a fair and balanced way of putting that. I think it's equally easy to get swept up in the yay, we finally get something like contenders back, as it is to get swept up in the negativity of like the fact that there are issues with like the fact that some of the games are happening on weekdays, which like limits the involvement of younger players who have school and what have you.
Satisfied with the fact that we were kind of only expecting information on one contenders tournament, and we got technically two. Like, I'm satisfied with that.
Yeah.
And for being a new game, I thought the principles, they made a lot of sense. So there are some positives to take out of it. I just think that the negatives also are there, and we need to kind of note them, and then hopefully as a community make sure that it's fed back well, and most importantly fed back constructively, and then we get to a situation where we have the best product for everyone.
Yeah, here's hoping. Looking forward to actually picking this apart again a little more in depth next week. But of course, the focus of today is the first episode of what we are jokingly referring to as Theymerpalooza. So we will get into a little bit of sort of Firinn's background and what you do in the scene. I wanted to just start this off by saying that, like, without me, I don't want to make this about me, so please don't even put me up on the full screen. Just keep it in the 4x4. It's very frustrating to watch the way in which countries around the world are attempting to legislate out of existence our trans brothers and sisters, and I can't do much. I don't have any political power. I don't have the money to bankroll sweeping changes, that kind of thing. But I do have a 1/4 stake in a podcast, and I think the very least we can do is platform some people from the community, just to hear a little about your perspective and what life has been like for you as a member of the trans community in the esports space. So, Firinn, again, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got started in Overwatch or esports in general?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, that might start with a little bit of like a a confession, I guess, in that like when I was like younger, I pretty much always hated video games. Especially shooters. I
What?
like.
Hang on.
Well,
I did not expect that at all.
like so like as a kid, like I did horse riding, I did judo, archery, like scouts. I tried like I liked books. I like read and wrote a lot. And like I think like a couple of my cousins tried to introduce me to stuff like Call of Duty. And I would pick up the controller, and I was literally like unable to not even like unable to hit enemies, but I was unable to consistently like point my camera at the enemies. Like I'd be looking at the sky, staring at the ground. I'd be like walking my camera like the wrong direction. Like I couldn't even steer well enough to like consistently like exit a doorway. Like, I'd be walking into door frames, walking into walls. Like I was hopeless, right? And so like I had a couple experiences when I was like 15, 16, 17, where like I'd try video games, I'd play it for like 20 minutes, and then I'd be like, nah, I'm going back to playing Pokemon on my DS. Like, and that's about as much video games as I'm able to do. And then like back in 2016, like I was just starting university, and when I came home from term time, like my brother was like constantly like running up and down the hallway, like slapping the wall, being like pew pew, doing little zork noises and like pretending to recall back to the kitchen. And he's like, I'm Tracer, and like after like some weeks of putting up with this, I'm like, all right, what is this all about? And my brother introduced me to this game, Overwatch, and I just remember like I liked it because it felt like it was trying to make me happy. Like all these like Call of Duty games, like they all felt very like there's mud and grime and there's like realistic gunfire and you're fighting Nazi zombies in grayscale. And then there was Overwatch, which was like there's a lesbian on the cover, and like more importantly, like Tracer feels like she's trying to make you happy, like she's like, yeah, the cavalry's here, let's go. And like Apex and Valorant weren't like out back then, and so like Overwatch, like it felt really different. And so like whenever I was home from university, I kept like kicking my brother off his PC and playing this game because there was just in all honesty, like there was something like really addictive. And I apologize, my video is never normally this bad. Like this is unusual levels of like bad internet for me, but like so like there was just something really addictive about the process of being like really astonishingly bad at something. I don't quite know how to explain that. Like I was always that kid where like, you get put in like gifted and talented classes or whatever, and then you never do any work because you have crippling ADHD. And so everyone's like, wow, there's like so much like wasted potential or whatever. And then Overwatch was like, out of everything I tried in like my entire life, the thing I was worst at. Like it just does not square with my brain. Like, and there's something awesome about that, right? Like you start off like going months and months, like just playing Mercy against AI because my brain literally can't like judge distances on the screen, right? Like my reaction times are like 5 to 7 working days, and trying to like trying to pick out like an enemy as like a moving red shape against like all these busy backgrounds with particle effects and like the different sounds in the game. And like for me as like a person with like a lot of autistic sensory issues, it kind of feels like you're playing Where's Waldo in like the front row of a punk rock concert. Like I'm like, where's the enemy? Like even like they're in front of me and they're shooting me and I'm dead. So like I can't play Overwatch like even slightly. And to me that was just like catnip. Like the process of like slowly figuring out something that you're so bad at, you think you're never going to be able to do it. And then like I got to like 600 SR, I think, like 690 as like a Zen one trick. And I was completely hooked on that. So that was the start of like my Overwatch journey. I was so bad at Overwatch that it just felt really good to be able to eke out like even the smallest successes.
Yeah, the way you've described that is like imagine the world's hardest jigsaw puzzle where all the pieces are blank, but like the opposite of that in terms of input stimuli. But that's really interesting because I don't think we have ever.
All the pieces yell at you, and when you try to put them in the jigsaw, they like get up and like shoot you in the head.
Yeah. God, that's just generally such a good descriptor for Overwatch in general. But it's interesting to have that as like your start into this, to come from somebody who like outside of things like Pokemon wasn't a gamer, would never have identified as a gamer, and from this you have founded an esports org, and that is quite a jump.
Quite a jump, yeah.
What was the genesis? Like, explain that path to us, please.
Well, yeah, it was kind of an accident. But so like
just chase one of those jigsaw pieces all the way into running a multifaceted esports org.
Yes. Well, so like around 2018, right? I'm in like low bronze. I'm this Zen one trick, and I joined like this gold plat team as like a bronze support player. And I one trick Zen because I knew I wanted to shot call, but I didn't have enough game sense to like know what to call. I just knew that Zen calls discords, so I was just like playing Zen, like target calling, having a good time. And it was like a very mixed bag of experiences because like obviously like presenting like being perceived as feminine, there's like a lot of people who will just be really weird.
Yeah.
Like and so like back when I started, like it was this wild west of like I had no idea where to go. And I was a lot more unsure about my gender back then, but I was like presenting as a cis woman at the time, and like that was a crap experience. So like I would like run into teams where people would be like, "You a girl? I don't want a girl on the team," or would make like just like weird sexual comments about like, "Oh, like you want to pocket me in mercy and like suck my dick," and it's like, no, fuck off, like, and like or like I don't know, like turn up to like events and get misgendered, and like a lot of organizations they would just be like, oh, like unless you were recording, like we're not going to do anything. Or like I played on a team where like if I tried to shot call, the coach would just like shout over me and be like, make me a sandwich. So like all of those are just like shit experiences, right? And eventually like I played on this team with someone who was like, oh, like I'm also involved with like this all women, all LGBT organization, like do you want to come hang out? And I came to hang out with them, and the environment was like completely different, right? And I said I would kind of want to join a team with them because, like, to me, that was like a fantasy, right? Like, there's this environment where like no one's going to misgender me, no one's going to make sexist jokes, and it's like all like a lot of people like me. And they didn't have any vacancies on their EU teams. They were like, you know, well, we don't have the ability to make more of these like EU like women and LGBT people teams because we don't have enough staff. Like, we're really like low on like people willing to manage EU teams. And I went, fine, I'll give it a go. And like I had no ambitions to be staff or anything like at first, like but I like
Just happened.
yeah, like and then after a while, like they were saying like, you know, they liked me as a manager. I was like organized, I had spreadsheets. And then the leader of that, so I was with Andromeda, and I believe the leader.
I wondered if that was Andromeda.
Yeah, it was Andromeda, right? And I think the leader of Andromeda like now works in Overwatch League, like Bailey.
Bailey.
Yeah. So she sat down, and like the head of the EU division, who was like Marzipan, stepped up and replaced her. And I said like, well, I'd be willing to take Marzipan's place running the EU division. And then like after the NA division kind of like leader stepped down, I said like, you know, I'd be kind of willing to do both. Like just, you know, it might be easier to centralize everything. So I ended up running like the EU and the NA like Overwatch divisions for them. And then after a while, it was just sort of like, it'd actually be like a lot easier to have my, like if I'm going to be running like all of these Overwatch teams, it would kind of be like easier in a few ways to have my own org. So I took some of the teams that I was like running, and we said like, you know, like Andromeda is fantastic. We still want to be like a valued partner. Like the thing with Andromeda was like, you know, obviously it was like all women, all LGBT, and we had a lot of teams that were say there used to be like a team of like 6 women, and then I don't know, like a main tank quits, and they go like 3 months without being able to swim properly because they can't find like a female main tank, right? And a lot of those teams started saying like, well, actually we still want to have this like inclusive environment, we still want to be like respectful, we still want to really value diversity, but it might be easier if we could say, you know, like we're going to be diverse teams, but we're going to be allowed, like if we want to pick up like, you know, a main tank who is a man but he's like a nice person, he's just like not going to be a dick, then like we want to be able to do that. And so like the combination of like we wanted to sort of like open that up a little bit, and we also like I personally just was wondering like running an org like sucks and it's a ton of work. Is it going to be like easier if I like have my own org and I can like control everything I'm doing? Spoiler, it wasn't. It was it was not easier. But I thought like, you know, maybe that'll be worth it. So like at the point where I was like running all of these teams anyway, it was like, you know, I might as well run an org. So we started Altiora, and then things got thoroughly out of hand.
And now you're on podcasts talking about it.
I have a question. What does the name Altiora mean? Does it just sound cool? I never looked it up. Does it mean anything?
It's Latin. It's a little bit hard to translate. You can translate it as like higher things, which sounds like a little bit stuffy. but it's
I also went with Latin for Incendia, so yeah, let's go.
well. The thing about Latin is the grammar is like constructed a little bit differently to English.
Yeah.
So like in Latin, if you just take an adjective, the ending of like any word like kind of just like defines what kind of class of word it is. So you can take an adjective and just like put a plural ending on it, and it will just mean like things that this adjective like applies to, right? So, like you could take like the adjective like green and just put like a plural noun ending on it, and you could translate it as like the green things, or like something that's green, or like an object that is green in some way, or like the green idea, the green thing, right? And so like there's this adjective that means like higher or taller or like loftier or whatever, and it's the noun plural form of that. So it's like you can translate it just literally as like some taller stuff, right? Or you can go for this very like loftier things, ideas translation.
Yeah. It gives you a lot of ideas, branding wise, to go with a Latin name as well, because you can make it a broader category. Because Incendia means to set fire to, so we can just be like fire. So it's simpler,
That's one of the struggles, right? Because when you have an org with a whole bunch of teams, you can like a lot of these orgs, they'll have themes. So like there's, for instance, like a ton of orgs out there that do like a Greek god theme of some kind, and then you'll have teams named like Athena and Zeus and Hera, or you'll have like teams out there that are like themed after animals, and you'll have like the lion team and the tiger team and the panther team. And we were looking for a theme that hasn't been done to death, which is actually kind of hard.
It's quite difficult,
yeah. So we ended up with this like theme of like just like taller things, right? So we have mountains, we have skyscrapers, we have like sequoia is just a really tall tree.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Was I couldn't figure out the sequoia one. I remember casting an Altiora. I can't pronounce the word sequoia.
Did I?
Oh, okay. I was like trying to figure out, because I know it's a tree. And like the other things didn't quite line up to me. Thanks for explaining that one.
It also explains the mountain logo.
We had an Angel Falls team at one point, which is like the world's tallest waterfall. And we had a skyscraper, and then obviously we have like mountain teams like Everest and Kilimanjaro.
Oh, I thought it was like all nature stuff at one point.
I mean, it sort of is. It's a very loose theme. It's a very loose theme.
In nature.
There's a lot of tall things. Well, there's a lot of tall things in both nature and in not nature.
True. Can I ask this tournament, this team that you started playing with, like before you joined Andromeda and then Altiora, what was that in, if you don't mind me asking? Like,
so I think the very first team that I was ever involved with was in like Overwatch Community Cup or something. It was one of those like fake Overwatch leagues where like all of the names are like parodies. So there was like the Dallas Fools, the Houston In-Laws, the Philadelphia Confusion, like that kind of thing.
Okay,
right.
I had wondered if it was going to be another Owlet connection, which we seem to run into all the time here. So to drag us back a little bit towards our list of questions and a thing that you started like in your story of why Altiora exists. Obviously, you responded to my request for people in the trans community to come and talk about what that's like for them. So you're a fairly forward-facing trans person, non-binary person. How has that been? Like, outside of that initial being misgendered and having these sexist comments thrown at you, which obviously is horrific, like, what has that experience been like for you as a person?
I think it's been a really mixed bag. Like I mentioned, like back when I started, it was this like very like Wild West, because I didn't know people. I had no idea where to go. And especially when you're like down in that elo, right? Like I think up in like tier 3, tier 2, there's very much like a network and everyone knows everyone. And so you can kind of take that for granted, right? That you kind of have a heads up like about like you're not gonna like get involved with people who are like super like transphobic or misogynistic. Like down in Plat, right? Like there's just so many teams and nobody knows anyone, and so you just take your chances, right? Like you roll the dice. And so like I think like back when I first started was when I had like almost like all of my like worst experiences. And then, well, actually, it was like personally that was when I had like all of my worst experiences. But then when I started like being involved with Andromeda, I kind of stopped having to deal with that shit in my personal life, because obviously like I was very much involved with like, you know, women LGBT teams where I wasn't dealing with that. But then I encountered some of like the most weird stuff during that time, because like, obviously Andromeda was like all women, all LGBT, and people just had like the worst reactions to that. Like I'd be advertising for like, I don't know, like hey, like I've got like a woman only, like LGBT only team, and they need a main tank. Like they're looking for players or looking for coaches. And so like I'd be going on like open Discords and just posting like, hey, like I'm looking for this and that and the other. And oh, by the way, it's like women LGBT only. And people would just like send me like sexual harassment. They send me like gore or porn, or like in some cases like I'd get like banned or shadow banned or blocked from like servers. And I'd get people like messages from people being like, so like just because I'm a male, I'm not allowed to play on your team. And I'm like, yeah, that is how
I think
that is how all women's teams work. Yep.
I think a lot of people don't understand the importance of all women's teams, right? Because they're like, okay, well, if I'm the better player, I should be on it. Well, the problem is, you know, females don't have as many opportunities, so they're not always going to be as good. You have an all-female team to play on, then they're as good, and they can get picked up to better rosters. Simple as that. And also, they have a safe space if they wanted to stay on that team. Not hard to understand.
Yeah, like I think it is like there's a lot of reasons to like join or avoid one, right? And like I think I completely understand the perspective of like some women prefer to just be on mixed rosters because they don't want to be treated differently to anyone else. And like I completely understand like that perspective as well. Like it's a very like valid perspective. I think it literally is just about like when I first came into that environment, I had no idea how to avoid those bad experiences, right? Because you can play on a team for like a month and have no idea that anybody on it is like misogynistic, and then somebody makes like I don't know like an offensive comment and you say like, hey, would you mind not saying that? And then suddenly they launch into this like I don't know like tirade of like women are like, hey, what the hell? So like it can kind of feel like the easiest way to actually just like avoid that is just to say like, right, I'm just not playing with cishet men anymore, right? Until you get to the point where actually you do feel able to advocate for yourself and you feel able to like vet teams a little bit and feel out like, okay, like this is a mixed gender team. Is it going to be a horrible experience or is it actually going to be okay?
Yeah, it's there aren't really any good tools for running that kind of like assessment of a person, of a team, of a community, other than
it would be handy just to have like this, like you have like lie detectors, like this openly, like just be able to tell if someone's homophobic, just fucking get rid of them. And it's like it's like a laser machine, so like it just once it figures it out, it's just like fuck you and kills them.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to go for some
that would be handy, wouldn't it?
Test, but hey, you've cut out several middlemen here.
Honestly, no, that would
it's
be
just a ray gun where, like, if you're not homophobic, it just like it's fine. But if you're homophobic, just like blasts you. Yeah, like love it. Right?
Maybe not kills them, just like shreds their arm or something.
Yeah, we'll have the map 5 podcast.
Or even worse, what they'll hit even more is the laser turns them gay in whatever way possible. Like any of the sexualities. They're just like, yeah, it turns them into what they didn't like. They wouldn't like that. And then we have more gays, and that's positive. Let's go. Sorry.
Okay.
I think that's
my solution. It's not maybe a good one, but...
Right, I'm trying to think of a good pivot.
How do we...
any other topic?
How do we...
Well, no, I mean, like, I could just continue on with the rant I was on if you want me to. I mean, like,
sounds great.
Yeah. Like, go on.
Like because like the funniest thing is, right, like you'll message these people and you'll say like, I'm recruiting for a women's team, and they'll say like, well, like, you mean I'm not allowed to join just because I'm a man? And I'm like, yeah, that is how women's teams work. And a lot of the time, like a surprising amount of the time, they will turn around and be like, well, you can't just exclude me because I'm a man. That's racist. Please explain to me in small words your logic as to how that's racist. And they'd be like, oh, because I'm a straight white man, I can't join. Well, I'm a straight white man, and I'm in charge of the thing. And then their heads explode, right? Because the concept of like a straight trans man is like just completely new to them. Like they just can't figure me out. Like that was just the funniest thing to me. Like always just the funniest thing to me.
Yeah.
I'd love to be a fly on the wall for that one, honestly.
I think this kind of gets slightly towards a really interesting conversation that we were having in the Map 5 podcast chat in behind the scenes here, which is that you're a fan of, you're a user of neopronouns. And for those, I know our audience, like our audience is not a big audience, but like for the most part, they're pretty good people. They know what neopronouns are. What's it like? The other aspect of this, like talking to you, is like, oh, I like neopronouns, but I also I'm fine with he, I'm fine with they, like whatever you're comfortable with. Like, how has the experience of like being in that situation where like actually you would prefer neopronouns even if like you're fine with the others been in this space? Like, what's been the uptake on that? Because we know what gamers are like with anything that is even a little bit different. So yeah, what's that been like?
I think it's been like a real mixed bag. Where I think even like, and to be clear, like I am like telling the truth. It's like I'm fine with he. It's not like I really would like people to use Z, but I'm like just like settling for he. Like
Sure.
I'm fine with he. And I think it's something where there's it actually like it's odd, right? Because there's something where I prefer, or I really think like Z and A and like all of like those neopronouns like are very like cool. But there's something where like I don't want to like inconvenience people. Like a lot of people just be like, hey, I don't know how to pronounce that. I don't feel like comfortable like using it and getting it wrong. And so then when somebody does end up using it, it very much is like something that jumps out at people, right? Like it's something that like very obviously like makes you like, oh hey, like this person's like super thing. And that's like to some extent like a positive thing about them, because I think like it can if you want to like very explicitly be like, hey, like I'm actually like not just trans, but like I think I have like fundamental problems with like the whole like system of gender or whatever, then like that's a very clear way to, I guess, like mark yourself out that way. But at the same time, like it marks you out, right? And that's not always a positive thing. I think it is like a whole mixed bag. Like for the most part, I think people are like very, very like willing to try and very accepting, but there's a lot of a thing where I think the reason why the non-binary community has like overwhelmingly like settled on they rather than like Z or one of these other gender neutral pronouns is just because like people already use it, right? And so it's like a lot easier for people to get used to. And so even people who are really like, they want to make the effort, but they're very uncertain about like, oh, like how do I pronounce like Z or whatever? And like I don't think there's a wrong way to pronounce Z. Like the entire point of Z is being like, hey, fuck the system.
Yeah.
Like you can pronounce it however you like.
I think that's really interesting because that is pretty much exactly the response that we had in the Map 5 Discord of like, we want to be respectful, but we don't know how these work because for the most part we are old white dudes, and we're not.
You say old.
Well, look, me, Jeff, and Billy are definitely old. So
Ocean's a boomer at heart, so it counts.
Ocean's a boomer at heart.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I think like it's actually really interesting, right? Because people, I think there's like, I guess, an assumption when people hear Z that it's like a new thing, right? Like oh, like this is like something Tumblr invented. But it's actually like there's this very, very long history of neopronouns that just goes back to like even like the 1850s, I think, where like a lot of people like writing magazines or newspapers or novels would just be like, hey, like I want to have a way in the English language of expressing that like somebody's gender neutral, like either that their gender like is somewhere in between like male and female or something else entirely, or just that their gender shouldn't matter or that we don't know their gender. And that's been something that like people have been like trying like over and over again to like innovate. And a lot of the time, like those attempts to like create a gender neutral pronoun, they'll catch on like in very limited like communities, and they won't spread further. So you have like there's this one, I think, like anarchist commune somewhere in the US that uses co as a gender neutral pronoun. And co is actually like derived from Indo-European. And I think it means like together, which is like a really cute idea, right? Like this idea of like a pronoun that actually means like, well, you could either interpret it as like all genders together, or you could interpret it as like we're coming together to support like, you know, gender neutrality. It's a really cool pronoun and it's really old. It has its origins like, you know, like 100 years ago. But if you say it today, people will assume that it's like, oh, it's like a newfangled Tumblr thing. And it's like, no, it's actually what it is it's respecting this aspect of queer history where people for like, you know, years and years have been like trying to like invent some sort of like gender neutral pronoun that everyone feels comfortable with or that has like a beautiful meaning. And it's like caught on, but not really caught on. And then like people don't hear about it. And a decade later, somebody tries to invent something else. So that's how you get, for instance, like per is like another gender neutral pronoun, which is actually just short for person. Which is again like a really cute idea.
That one really interested me. You were like teaching us. So I was like, I kind of like that. Not for me, but I like the idea of that.
It's a really cute idea, right? And it's something that was kind of like, it caught on a little bit. It was used in like a couple sort of like queer like zines or queer communities, and then it fizzled out. And then, you know, like a decade later, somebody invents like Z or something, right? And like we very much like, I think the majority of the community has settled on they. But actually, like that idea of there being like a consensus, from my understanding of queer history, like that's like the slightly newer thing is this, like, I guess, like to be clear, like they isn't new at all. They goes back to Shakespeare, right? But like the thing where like most non-binary people have kind of like settled on and agreed on like we're all going to use they, like that is I think more new, where like in the past you see like a lot more like experimentation, a lot more people sort of being like, oh, like I don't really like, especially like before the internet, right, when queer communities were more fractured and had like less communication, and so there was less opportunity, I guess, for everyone to come together and agree on one thing. So it just turns into like everyone all over the globe is using like all these different ideas. And to me, that's part of like why I like neopronouns. It's like just acknowledging some of that history.
Yeah, I quite like some of the gender anarchy of like we're just going to pick this, and then that's going to go. We'll find something else new and cool in a little while, and then that'll go. And yeah, it feels very thematically appropriate. I was wondering as you were talking through this and thinking back to your experience with Overwatch. Obviously, Altiora is larger than just Overwatch, and you have people that play in other games, even if like not as full teams, just by the virtue of the fact that we're all gamers together. Do you have a feel for how the Overwatch community is compared to other communities with regards to like respect for the LGBT community and issues along those lines?
I want to say I do, but I don't. And I think the reason I don't is because everyone has, like, even people in the same community can have like incredibly different experiences. And this is something that like I think like people realizing this would solve like a lot of heartache in like, I guess, like, online discourse. So for instance, like there's somebody in my organization where like we worked together for like months before we actually realized that we came from the same hometown. Like we grew up within like 10 miles of each other. But we had completely different experiences with like LGBT acceptance, where like one of us was like, you know, like the entire place was just like ruled by conservatives and like it was incredibly sexist. And the other person is like, well, like I didn't really have that experience. And that's something that I also experienced with like people who went to the same school, where like one person could say like, oh yeah, like I had like tons and tons of like getting bullied because of being LGBT, and somebody else would be like, yeah, like I went to the same school and I didn't like experience that at all, right? And I think it's very easy for people online to get very hung up on like, oh, like, well, I didn't experience that harassment, so it's like not real, or you've made it up, or you're doing something that to deserve it. But the reality is that like this is something that happens all the time, like in all sorts of areas of life. And people just have like incredibly different experiences, like even when they're sitting right next to each other, right? And so like I've talked to lots of other like LGBT people in the Overwatch community who have completely different experiences to me. Like maybe like you talk to some women in Overwatch who are like, you know, like all of this like sexist harassment, it's never happened to me. And then you talk to other women in the Overwatch community who are like, every single game I get a rape threat. And it's like, what's with that, right? And you have to sort of like find some kind of framework that enables you to explain that without like blaming people and saying like, oh, like they're doing something wrong. So there's a lot of like online discourse that ends up feeling like it's trying to rank communities, like, oh, like Overwatch, like, is it more or less transphobic and toxic than like Valorant? Or like, is EU or NA like more toxic? And it always feels just a little bit like a dick measuring thing, where actually like it's very hard to tell like which is worse when individual people like in the same like locations and communities can have such different experiences, whether that's just because of like the people that they spend time with, or whether it's because of the way they present, or whether it like, you know, how others perceive them. Like there's been like studies, for instance, like on how this is like it feels semi-tangential, but like there's been studies on how like when somebody is a criminal is like picking like who walking down the street would they target to like pickpocket. And they talk about how like they will analyze like the way somebody walks, like how like their clothes, like how they carry themselves. But a lot of factors that like it's not like they just like rob whoever's wearing like the richest outfit, right? A lot of factors that the most of us can't even see about how somebody like walks or carry themselves that makes somebody else pick them out as like, oh yeah, that's a victim. And so it's not something that's easy to detect. It's not something that's easy to fix. Like if you are somebody who like continually has these bad experiences, like you may not even know like why people target you. So I don't quite know where this is going, but like I have
it's all interesting.
Like I've heard from some people who will say, like, they go into a Valorant lobby and they get instant, like, like death threats or something, and they're like, oh, Valorant's worse than Overwatch. And then I go into Valorant and I have like way less like random like rape threats from people. So like, what's with that, right? And it's probably just like, maybe it's like the character I play, maybe it's just like how my voice sounds. Like, you don't know why somebody has like targeted you for harassment, and it's not that person's fault.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost got something to do with the fact that like there are X% of people who are just that kind of awful, and sometimes you can just be unlucky and run into the highest percentage of those awful kinds of people, and sometimes you're lucky and you don't. I think you're probably right to call out the fact that people tend to use that as a metric for saying like, well, clearly my game is better than your game because we have less people who issue rape threats than your game, which is like, that's actually not a great metric to describe a community.
Yeah.
Even if you're using it as a positive, like that's a really weird metric. That's a really interesting perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, and like I think like in some respects I'm also like, I guess, like very privileged because I do just like work in Altiora. So like these days I feel like I encounter like less and less of like that like toxicity, right? Because I'm just a bit of a coward. Like I like my org, I like the people in it. I stay in Altiora and I don't do like a lot of work outside of Altiora. So, and because I don't play like like high SL ranked, like people don't recognize me in ranked, like, so it's like I'm not. These days, like I encounter like very very little like harassment or like problems of any sort, I guess. Like I would never like take that experience and say like, oh, that means that it's not real, or that like other trans people in esports aren't getting like harassed, because like I remember what that was like, and like it's absolutely real. I'm lucky enough that like I can very aggressively like curate the people I spend time around, and I don't deal with it anymore.
Yeah,
I actually have a point. I have a question on this, just out of curiosity, just something. Someone you said, you're quite safe with like, who you hang out with, etc. And you came on this podcast, because Phil issued like an ultimatum to try and have some trans gamers here. Ultimatum? Maybe it was that aggressive language. It was, wasn't it?
That's not what ultimatum means, but
You have to.
It was a request.
I was saying like, and also like you're on Twitter. I see you on Twitter a lot. Do you feel like you have to be like safer with who you interact with on Twitter, and also like who you would talk to in this sort of setting? Is that something that you have to take into account, given your circumstances?
Honestly, not at the moment. And I think like it's partially just like, I guess, for Altiora, like I know we catch a lot of flack for like being too strict, or like for being very like insular, and, like less like, I guess, connected with the external Overwatch community. But like I feel like I haven't actually. I don't quite know like why. But I feel like I'm just dealing with like a lot less stuff these days. And so it's a lot easier just to like take risks, because I feel like if somebody like does like start tweeting something transphobic at me, like I'm just gonna block them and I'm gonna move on. And then like a couple like months down the line, like if they want to like, I don't know, like enter Pride Cup or something, I'm just gonna be like, no, fuck off. Like
compare your name with the block list.
I was just curious if that sort of being safer would translate to other aspects like social media and stuff. Because I'm not from the LGBTQ plus community. I don't understand. I can't pretend to understand those sort of things.
Yeah, like I think honestly, like I'm just very lucky in that like I know, like I'm sure people are out there talking shit, but like no one tells me about it. So like why would I care, Like so like I think like I occasionally like notice there are definitely stereotypes. Like for instance, like I don't like manage teams at all. Like over in EU, like I coach like our EU team. And I notice like a lot of people will understand that until they hear my voice, and then as soon as they hear like I have like a more higher pitched voice, they assume like, oh, like this is like a manager. Like where's the coach? And I'm like, fuck off. Like,
you know what? That is actually something that I've heard as like a stereotype. Like if you have a, I guess like a, like a lighter pitched voice, like they assume you're a manager. It's a weird stereotype. I've heard it a couple of times now, and it's interesting that you bring it up.
Well, it's like any position in the community where it's like completely thankless work, obviously like women do that, and obviously like any position that gets spotlight, obviously men do that, right? But like
Yeah, no, I'm
It's
just really interested in that because I've heard that a couple of times now. I didn't know if anyone else had like heard that sort of thing. Interesting.
yeah. Like I don't know. Like I don't know if it is a product of like Altiora just being like very. I think like we very much are on a system where it's like you get vouched in rather than like you have to like do something terrible to get banned. It's more like you have to like bring something of value to get in, and like I think that potentially like protects me from like a lot of like just like shitty interactions. But honestly, like I don't know where a lot of it went. Like last year for Pride Cup, we had like some trouble with like some people being weird on Twitter. Like someone like spammed the entry form with a bunch of slurs. This year it's been like zilch, like nada, like nothing. And like I'm gonna like touch wood like that because like if I say that somebody's gonna come and put slurs in the Twitch chat. But like no one's been like weird or mean or homophobic or anything. Like and I partially do like attribute that to just like the entire Altiora is just like we're just a bunch of trans people who don't like take any shit anymore and will just ban you if you breathe wrong. And partially like I think I'm just lucky that like I don't like have to interact with like a lot of people like that anymore.
Heck yeah.
I have an interesting jumping off point here because we sent you these questions ahead of time so we can get like give you a chance to do some research and see if there was anything you wanted to or didn't want to talk about. You've mentioned quite extensively like how like Altiora is. It might be unfair to call it a gated community. It's a curated community. Well, yeah, okay, fine. It's a gated.
I don't think we're at all like ashamed of that. Like I think. Fine. We very much accept that we're a community that like isn't for everyone. There's going to be some people who hate us, and like that's fine. Like we're just doing our thing, you know.
Yeah. So the question I wanted to ask is on the back of that, how do you come to then have a roster with Decod, IC, Wub, and a bunch of other like really well-known teams? If you can tell us how that happened, I think that'd be really interesting.
Well, I mean, so when we first. This is, I guess, a bit of a story because, like, when we first like bought into Contenders, like when we first went in, I think we had a lot of like these very big dreams. We were like, you know, we don't like the way that Path to Pro can be like a little bit of it can be a little bit cliquey. It can be a bit of an old boys club. It can be very much like about, it can be like who you know rather than like how good you are. And so we have all of these like ambitions, right? About like we're gonna go in, we're gonna like have open trials. So we're gonna have like, you know, anyone can come and have like a fair shot of getting on the team. We're going to try and have like a tier 3 like academy team that can like develop players like a tier 2 team. We're going to have like, you know, a 4-4 and a 4-3 team like below that can develop players for the academy team. Like so it's going to be like a really fair, clear like path upwards. And then none of that happens, right? Because it turns out that like well, I mean, open trials happened, and I'm happy that it happened. But like, it turns out that like just being in tier 2 is really hard. And we were like, like a little bit, yeah. Like it turns out we were like maybe like a little bit naive, right? And so like, there's like a lot of stuff that just like goes on behind the scenes. There's a lot of like negotiation with like maybe like you think that 2 players like the best options available, but they don't want to play with each other. Maybe like there's a player who's like really good and is available, but like they just like don't want to play this season because they're a bit tired, or like there's so many things that can happen. Or like you can be getting a roster together and then like a couple of your players get picked up for like another team and then you have to start over because like the other players don't want to play unless you have like those players that just left. Like there's a lot that goes into it. And so like I think our first couple of seasons of Contenders, we were actually really, really lucky to get like, you know, the names we got, where it was all very like a little bit like last minute of just like, so like the roster that we had with Decod and IC, like they actually came to us like as 6 and said like, you know, like they're already a team, like would we take them and play like under our name? And we didn't have like a way without that to like build a roster. Like we our first roster didn't all want to stay together, and we weren't able to like rebuild that in the time we had, partially just because we were like inexperienced in building rosters, right? So like of course like this was like a very, very good option for us. We're like, you know, 6 amazing players like wanted to play for us, so we said yes. But I don't think I can take any credit for like bringing like Decod and IC together. Like it was very much like a and I think like we like learned a lot in that first like few months of Contenders about like you can go in with like big ideals and whatever, but like that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, or that like other people will just like see like the good things you want to do and be like, yeah, I'm on board with that.
Oh
like,
shit!
People
Yeah,
have their own goals, right?
Yeah. I think a lot of things is that it's also different region to region, right? I'm not
Yeah.
correct if I'm correct in saying like you're from Europe, Roland, you're from the UK, correct?
I'm Scottish, yeah.
Okay, so like sometimes like you'll have like a very I guess British mindset. Like for me, I have a very very like a global mindset, and I go to negotiate for projects in North America, and they think completely different. And that's something that we've had to adjust with a lot. I have a couple of questions, just orgoner wise, just for fun.
We'll just sit back. It's fine.
Yeah, no. I just wanted to ask, Altiora, you said one of the what are like the primary goals and functions of Altiora? Because you've got a very open community, but you've also got some very competitive projects. So what's the kind of primary goals about Altiora? Because I think it's really interesting to hear about. Because I'm sure a lot of people don't know.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't know. I think a lot of people just see that we have a contenders team, and I think don't necessarily know about what else we do. So I think like there's kind of just two main like pillars to Altiora. And you say like we're this very open, inclusive community, and we also have like competitive teams. And I guess like one of the big thoughts I had when I was starting it was like I wanted to prove to people that that isn't a contradiction. Because I think there's a lot of people out there who will say like, oh, you can either be nice, you can either have this like philosophy of trying to be kind to people, trying to be inclusive, or you can be competitive, but you can't do both, right? Like, and we've had like in Andromeda, like I used to hear a lot of people saying like, oh, like if you have an all women's team, like I don't want to join that, I want to join a competitive team. As though, well, why can't an all women's team be competitive? Like why are we assuming that? Like it, because if you have like an all male team, nobody ever looks at that and say like, oh, like, well, surely like that's not competitive, because if you were just picking up the best player of like every role, then obviously you'd have like an equal like men and women, right? Like no one ever looks at male teams and goes like that's not competitive. And I think there's also like a lot of, I guess, trade-offs you make in the process of building a team where like, let's say you have somebody who has like a history of making like inappropriate comments, but they're the best player for the role. Do you pick them up, right? Or there's a lot of things where it's like, I think a lot of people have this perception that like if you want to make the best team, if you want to make a competitive team, you can't be nice. You have to be ruthless. You have to like pick up like cishet men who say terrible things. You have like you can't like do stuff like I don't know, like open trials, because like you'll put off good players. You have to be elitist. You have to only look at the best players, because if you look at worse players, then like the best players won't want to play. And I guess I had this like very, very naive, like very idealistic thought of like, well, if we can go and have like this ideology of just trying to be like super inclusive, trying to have like super high standards and be nice to everyone, and if we can then in that environment like make competitive teams win, doesn't that just rule people wrong, right? And I guess that was part of the thought. And then it evolved. It obviously, like as we grew and as the ideas like took shape, it like evolved into something like a lot bigger. Where we have, I think we're the only organization that has like this, at least in the West, that has like this whole ladder, right? Where we have like a contenders team, and then we also have like gold teams, plat teams, like masters teams. And a lot of people are like, hey, what the fuck is the point of that, right? Like the gold team doesn't make you money, they don't get you like reputation. Like, what the fuck is the point of that? And I think like we always started off with this goal of trying to make esports be more inclusive, and I guess like make esports like a better place, like in the way that we can. And what kind of occurs to everyone is like, well, everyone wants like more women in like OWL, right? But like you can't have more women in OWL until there's more women in contenders, and you can't have more women in contenders until there's more women in tier 3, and you can't have more women in tier 3 until there's like more like 4-4, 4-3, 4-5 teams that are like, like developing female and LGBT players, like, and giving them like those experiences. And so for me, I think we have this like on the one hand like this goal of like trying to promote like inclusion, respect, diversity, and on the other hand this goal of like being like a really like educational organization that can say to you like, hey, like you've never, I don't know, like coached before in your life, like come coach our plat team, and if that's a good experience and you realize that you think like coaching is for you, then like maybe we give you a GM team and you coach the GM team and like try to develop people and try to give people that clear path upwards. And for me that goes hand in hand, right, of like the development and the educational aspect. Like I think that's necessary in order to increase like the diversity and the inclusion. So that's the goal. And I think it's very easy to like look at us and be like, well, sometimes we don't really like achieve that goal, right? So like at the moment, for instance, over in North America, where we want to have this like ladder of teams that like promotes people and develops people up. We had like a masters team and a GM team that both sort of like broke up. So at the moment we have like a diamond team on NA and this huge gap, and then we have like contenders team, right? The likelihood of us promoting anyone from the diamond team to the contenders team is like very, very low, right? Like that really like isn't happening. But like it's at the end of the day, like that's what we're trying to build. And like as long as the people in the organization feel that it's like a safe space where they're like improving and they're happy, like I'm happy.
Cool.
I think it's
Yeah,
amazing.
no, I wanted to hear, because like our like primary like thing at Incendia is developing talent across the world and trying to get them to progress upwards. Not necessarily internally, like externally. Like all of our improvements have been externally, right? You know, as I was talking earlier in the podcast, Just Deserve, Top Dragon, a Prody broke their wrist and had to retire because of us. A Peach and Frong, they all progressed outside to like bigger Korean organizations. So very, you know, similar ideas but different ways of achieving them. So it was really interesting, you know, actually hear the primary goal of Altiora, because we've never heard it straight from yourself before. So that's good. That's good. That's good news for everyone, and everyone can go and hear that if they want to learn more about Altiora and who they might be signing for in the future.
Yeah, like it's always been, I guess, like trying to develop people. So like we do a lot more than like teams. Like for instance, a little while ago we were doing like casting workshops. We still do a lot of support for casters. So if you're like a baby caster, you've never casted before, you can come along to like our pods on Saturdays. They get like 6 viewers. We don't care. The entire point of us producing those is it's basically just like, if you've never casted before, you can come give it a go. And casters can come out and do like experiment with different casting duos, like learn new stuff. And that's like the only reason we have it, right? And then we have like mentorship, and we have like these little, I think we want to start them up again at some point, like these little workshops where people can come and do like improve on their casting. And so we're trying to, and Pride Cup and the tournaments we run, it's all like for the same goal of like trying to make like improvement in all aspects, like more accessible and more inclusive. And I think we always have like so many projects on the back burner. Like we always have like, there's so many things that like people, I guess, like don't see, because like we get like 90% of the way there, and then like IRL comes up for somebody. But like there's this whole, like we have fingers in a lot of pies, right? Because we're trying to do like all of these different things, where if we see like an opportunity where we think we can like improve like inclusion or whatever, like we'll just be like, yeah, we'll give that a go. And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't.
Do you have any of those projects that you can share with us? Something that maybe you would like to do in the future, or anything that you're kind of excited to maybe one day do for the organization? It's okay. We can do it. It's okay.
Don't do what I did and make something you don't need to.
I think I've learned the hard way, right? Is I used to have projects that were like 99% done, and sort of like excitedly hint about them and be like, oh yeah, we've got big things coming up. And then like a key partner ghosts you, or somebody pulls funding, or like somebody like, IRL comes up, and then I look like an ass, right? Like we had this thing with like a women's tournament. We really wanted to run like a women's tournament where we had like potentially like a really huge sponsor lined up. And then obviously like another big women's tournament was announced, and our sponsor ghosted us. Like we never heard from the sponsor again. And that's been like a few times where like we've had like a maybe huge project, and like for instance, like sometimes like I can't manage everything myself, so we bring somebody to like lead it up. People are really excited, and then real life comes up for that person. The project kind of like gathers dust. Like I cannot tell you like how many huge exciting projects are just like on the back burner. So there's I'm very wary these days of like announcing something before it's like done, because it's going to curse it into never happening.
I was looking more just for ideas, that excite you more than like actually like announcing anything.
I'd love to run more tournaments. We've done a couple tournaments, like we did Spring Cup, we're doing Pride Cup. Like I'd love to do like women's tournaments or like more inclusive tournaments in the future. I'd definitely love to do like more of the stuff. We've had a few sort of like tries at doing like various like educational workshops. Like we tried to do like debate clubs and like discussion groups for like potential like coaches to come and like debate about like what is the matter, and people who are like learning to coach.
That's a cool
and
idea.
we had like a very brief sort of like coach apprenticeship program where like if you want to be a coach but you've never done it before, you can come shadow somebody. All of that is like a little bit like kind of happening, kind of like occasionally like a little bit on the back burner, but we're still like working on all of that like workshopy stuff in the background, because that's really like we want to be, I guess, like educational. And we've also like looked in a little bit into like partnering with like schools, like trying to like help out like for instance like high school like esports clubs. We've looked into things like trying to do like a lot more like lower SR, like little development programs and boot camps, like we've looked into. There was a huge thing that I was really passionate about in terms of trying to do like a little bit like a vetting program, so that for like something that when I was growing up doing judo, everyone that I worked with had actually like been vetted to like work with young people, and that's something that is very much missing from the esports scene at the moment. So like we were working a little bit on like a project to try and make like background checks and stuff like accessible for esports staff, so that you can say like, hey, like I have like been like actually like vetted to work with young people and try and make the scene safer. There's so much like this kind of like on the back burner, right? Because there's always like new fires to put out. But
that's amazing, though. It's I love your passion. So it's I'm excited to hear about all these ideas and all the different pies that Altiora has their fingers in. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, what I will say, Firinn, is as and when you have some of these to announce, let us know, and we're happy to plug that as much as we can for our limited reach
100%.
here. More than happy
and also, like you're saying, work about helping out casters. Literally, like cool talent manager with video agents. Oh, fuck's sake!
Okay, don't worry, we'll delete it in post.
Can we? Yeah, no, please. Cool talent manager with
if people want to come and get involved with like the programs we have for casters, like I'm really like I'm not that
literally
like,
send us a message. We're right here.
Yeah,
like,
no,
don't be scared of us. Oh yeah. I actually have one last question on the subject of Altiora. I wanted to ask why NA Contenders? Obviously, I think I can guess the reason. Why not Europe? But why NA over Europe? Because I know Altiora is quite westernized-ish, right? So, why NA over Europe?
There's a couple reasons. One would just be that NA was like, at the time we were looking to get like a contenders team, like NA was sort of like what's available. One is we've always been trying to be like a global organization. Like we very much want to be like an equal like NA plus EU. Like we always kind of deal with the perception that we were like an EU org. So we thought like if we go into like NA contenders, it'll balance out a little bit, and we'll feel like a more of a balance of NA and EU. And then also just like I think like some of the players that we were able to get in NA were like a little bit of like a better fit for the organization potentially. So it was very. I think it did a complete.
You gave three different answers, and none of them was the one I was expecting.
What was the one you were gonna guess?
I don't know if I could say it on broadcast.
What are you? Go ahead. Now I'm curious.
No, I'll message in live channel in a second. I just don't think Look, realistically, like let's just say the EU scene has declined, and I only was suspecting that it's just a better fit, like financially as well. I'd assume.
I mean, like
long term financially, definitely not shorter term.
We don't make money. Like I don't. Think we're likely to start making money anytime soon. But no, I mean, honestly, like if I was to add like another reason, I would say that like at the time when we were like buying in, we obviously like we do have like an EU tier 3 team, and so I think we've never really had like a strong NA tier 3 team. Like we've had NA GM teams, but I think there was partially a thing where as unrealistic as it might be, like I would love to actually like develop like our NA tier 3 team like towards contenders, right? And so like already having like a slightly stronger like EU, like I think it made more sense to add like a contenders team to
Okay. Yeah. I was surprised by those answers. They're good answers, though. And yeah, I think there's one more topic to kind of.
I think
one or two more topics.
I think there's a nice segue here, because we've been over the fact that like, the main point of Altiora is sort of development internally and then onto externally if that's appropriate. On that front, it's been kind of a big year for Altiora. Maybe not directly, but like looking at the history of the org, because from Altiora, at some point we have. Vulcan, Backbone, and Wub all starting in the Overwatch League this year. How's that felt? Even if they weren't here for like the long haul on the team, that's got to feel pretty good, right?
I mean, I'm absolutely delighted for those players. I think it's fantastic that they made it to Overwatch League. But I don't think we can take any sort of like credit for that in particular. Like I think there's a dynamic right now where like North American Contenders is like being looked at a lot more because obviously like they changed to Overwatch 2, there's new metas, there's also shorter contracts. So teams are like looking at North American players because the visas are like easier. And also like, and this is like not necessarily a good thing. Like teams are being like a lot faster to let go of players, and so like it's like a lot more players like being picked up to replace those players that get like abruptly let go. And so like I think it's mid-season, like it's a lot easier for teams to like make pickups from like NA Contenders right now. I think like all of the players that we've seen like go on to like Overwatch League, like I'm absolutely delighted for them. They're fantastic players, and like that's why we like obviously like wanted them to like represent us in the first place. But I think we picked up some very snazzy names who were incredibly talented, and I think like we obviously got like 5th to 6th finishes with those players, and that's in part because of our own like inexperience. We were new to Contenders, and we often like I think both of the seasons we were in, we got rosters sorted like kind of like a little bit like later, like closer to the deadline for roster lock, and so we didn't give those teams like maybe enough chance to like develop together. But like I think we had some like very very snazzy names, and who were like already incredibly talented before they played for us.
Sure. Okay, I think that's a fair assessment, and I think you do yourself quite a service there by being as humble about that as you are.
It's a good answer. It's a really good answer.
It really is.
I think we'd love to have that development ladder, right? Like I would absolutely love to have that ladder where like somebody can join like a GM team for us and get given these like clear criteria of like, okay, like you need to do like this, that, and the other to move up to the tier 3 team. Like you need to improve on like this to go to like the tier 2 team, and then like develop players towards Al. And that is the dream, but it's not there yet, right? Like and especially it's been, I think you say like it's been a big year, but it's been ups and downs where like we got our contender teams in NA, but then at the same time like our GM and masters teams in NA like broke up, and so it's kind of like we have that dream of like building that ladder and that development ladder, but like it's not quite coming together yet, and I have complete faith that it will come together. I can't pretend that it's a dream, right? And it's a dream that I'm super proud of, but we're not there yet.
Fair enough.
We are looking seeing that develop more and more for Altiora.
Surely.
We are, Firinn, at the end of our list of questions, but I feel like this probably wouldn't be a good platform if we didn't give you an opportunity to talk about something you specifically would like to talk about. So if you've got anything you want to bring up here at the end of the show, please have at the stage.
What would I want to talk about?
You don't have to.
Maybe the cool sword in the background, or yeah.
I mean, yeah. I'm just to be honest with you, my wardrobe door won't stay closed, so I just leaned the sword against the wardrobe door. Wouldn't fly open in the middle of streams.
We've all got wardrobe swords. We've all got a wardrobe that needs that kind of treatment. Yeah, it's very relatable.
I actually don't have a sword. I should get a couple of them.
You don't have a wardrobe sword? I thought.
I've got. I just want the sword. Swords are cool. They're like really like interesting weapons.
Swords are cool. No, I mean it's partially there because so I don't know if you've heard of Castles and Castles. They're a fantastic like organization that does Dungeons and Dragons shows with like esports talent. I'm running a show called like the Supernatural Handbook for Humanity's Heroes, or SHUSH, SHHH, on there at the moment. Nice. So like I made my background as horror, spooky D&D as possible, and part of that was the sword.
Gotcha.
But they're fantastic. Really recommend checking them out.
Yeah, we're big fans here of Castles and Castles.
Yes, we are.
I think Jeff is coming up. But Jeff has been like a supporter from day one, and is on finally has his dream come true. He's actually getting on an episode soon.
Yes.
Oh, awesome!
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Not tomorrow,
just
but
like
next
weapons,
Saturday.
So that's why I took interest in that.
And Phil's been on there a couple times as well.
People to work with.
Yeah.
Yeah. We like Castles.
We're big fans of Castles and Castles around here. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, they're fantastic to work with. I have no idea what's actually going to happen in my show because a vampire told them to go to London, and they all were like, right, it's time to hijack 3 cars and go to New York, and then fly to London. Because the vampire told them to. So that I guess we'll all find out what the hell happens there on Monday.
Yeah, that's sounds like classic D&D. Frankly, it's like here's what I, the DM, would like to happen, and then we'll go from there and see what happens. Yes, do you know what we've been highlighted here that we have in fact missed one of the questions. Thank you for catching us on that one, Firinn. What's running an org like?
I mean, I don't desperately need to answer that question, but I think it was on the list. So I had notes on it. But yeah, I mean, I never wanted to run an org. I didn't. I sort of stumbled into it, right? And I think it's there's nothing really like it. I think personally, my approach is that like I don't like to ask anyone to do anything that like I'm not willing to do myself. So like I've kind of just done a little bit of everything in the org. Like when all the graphic artists are busy, I make graphics. Like the reason I started out coaching was like sometimes like we have like a plat team or a diamond team that their coach quits, we can't find another one. So I used to just like fill in and help them stay like focused in scrims or something. Like I've managed teams when they need it. Like in tournaments, we've had like casters like drop out last minute, and I was like, yeah, I'll fill in, I'll cast.
Yeah.
Yes.
You like at the end of the day, like you end up being like a backstop, right? Like if something isn't done or is done badly, like you're the one responsible. Like it looks bad, so you have to be able to like take responsibility and say like, yeah, like I'll do that. So you end up like it's really rewarding. Like I learned skills that I never thought I would learn. Like I never thought like starting out being like that trash at Overwatch, right? Like the idea that I was gonna like coach like an EU like tier 3 team is like what the hell. But then it also like it's like a really terrible environment to learn new skills, because like it's in fact I would say like the worst possible environment to learn something new, when you don't want to make mistakes and you don't want to fuck up, and you don't want to step on toes. And like I think a lot of the time, like if I make a graphic, say like it could be really bad, and the worry is like if you're the guy in charge, like maybe people are just going to be polite, they're not going to tell you like how bad it is. And like that was like a huge issue like when I started learning to coach, like when I was like coaching like plat diamond teams, and people would think my opinions were bad. But people are shy, they don't want to tell me because they're like, oh, the guy's like the org owner. So you have to like set up all these like mechanisms, because like no matter like how nice you are to people, some people are always just going to be shy, right? And not going to want to speak up. So you set up like I don't know, like anonymous like feedback forums and stuff. And like it's really hard, like in terms of like you always will be like a rep of your org, and you'll make mistakes and you'll say stupid shit and you'll do really dumb shit and people will screenshot it. Yeah, and like it's like it's like learning to manage people is this balance, right, between if you're doing too much, people feel micromanaged, like you're stepping on toes, and if you don't provide like enough support, people feel like lost and abandoned, and like you will fuck that up. And so like a lot of the time people DM me and they say like, oh, like you've run an org, like you've started an org, do you have like advice for like starting an org? And my biggest advice is always like, just don't, like it's terrible, don't do it.
No. When Phil asked the question I put in our live channel, there is one word and the answer is hell. Like it is pretty difficult. I mean, I think my one piece of advice, I just kind of decided to answer the question as well. It'd be like, don't be afraid to fuck up. I mean, Eli's worked with me. Eli, another manager in the Overwatch. They will tell you I fuck up like every day. Like Eli literally, like when they're like mostly working with us, has to have like a calendar to remind me of shit. Like I'm not even joking. So that'll be like discussed in like a later episode. But like don't be afraid.
Mice, who manages my EU team for me, has a screenshot of him posting like reminder of something to me, and then replying to it and saying like, hey, reminder of the reminder, and then replying to that message going, reminder of the reminder of the reminder.
Yeah,
and
it happens.
5 beats before I respond.
Yeah, no. And you're always going to have like, just while we have the topic of, orgs are challenging. Like, sometimes you're going to have like fucking nothing. Everything's gone wrong. Like, for example, like, Incendia, we had nothing until 10 days ago, and suddenly, since I've actually leaked it, we've got 2 contenders projects for the next season. Like, that just randomly happened. Like, I have no clue how it happened, to be honest. I just got 2 messages and we're like, yeah, let's go.
I think it can feel like a very almost like Sisyphus pushing the boulder uphill, right? Where like you build a new team, it's almost perfect, you're almost ready to do a roster reveal, and then like I don't know, like one person leaves, right? And it takes you find like 3 weeks to find like the perfect like new main tank, whatever. You're about to like enter tournaments to a roster reveal, and then like a support leaves or something. It's like 3 weeks to find the perfect new support at DPS. Like it's, and anything like we mentioned earlier, like projects that they get like 99% done, they get put on the back burner. Like it can be hell, like just in terms of like managing like expectations and like the gap between like your ambitions and what you're actually able to do.
One must imagine Sisyphus happy, but I don't think it happens all that often for the poor guy.
I think it takes a very particular person to be happy as Sisyphus.
Do you know what? I swear I had a good transition here, but the Sisyphus thing has just completely knocked that out of my head.
I apologize.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. Is as we brought up the subject of Eli, we are looking to make Theymerpalooza basically a three-parter. I don't mind telling you, Eli has volunteered to be one of those people, and the other person is Paddington, friend of the podcast, all-round good egg, who has been watching this and like listening to some of your answers, going, oh, "They just like me for real." It's been kind of interesting to watch.
Yeah, it's cool. That Eli episode, just warning you, is going to be fucking carnage. Jesus, I'm looking forward to it, but I'm also not.
I'm
very
thinking
much
of
Sorry, we
scheduling
are
it
in
for the week
trouble.
I've got Apex Legends hosting, just so I don't have to deal with it.
Oh yeah, no, like it's not going to be a fun experience. It'll be fun, but also not a fun experience, just because Eli work together. It's already chaotic energy there. Like, bruh, it's not going to be fun on podcast. I'm sure it will be fun. It's next week, all right.
That feels to me like a pretty nice place to wrap this up. So Firinn, thank you so much for coming and joining us. It's been super interesting, really fun to get to know you a little better and learn more about Altiora. Where can people find you and the various things that Altiora are involved with?
I apologize. My hay fever's chosen now to hit. I'm not crying on stream. But yeah, do you find like I'm at Firinn-ish. Firinn was taken, so I went for Firinn-ish, which as in similar to Firinn. It's
clever.
It's an old joke among my friend group of like, I'm not really Firinn. I'm more of like a Firinn-shaped sort of person, But yeah, so. Do you find me at like at Firinn-ish on Twitter and Firinn Sunlight on Twitch, although I'm barely streaming anymore. More importantly, you find Altiora at like Altiora_gaming on Twitter and Twitch, because Altiora is where we put all of the awesome projects. The only reason to follow me in particular would be like my show One Castles and Castles, I think. And yeah, like I mean, I always love like hearing about anything like within the esports community that's just like promoting like women, like LGBT people, like people of color, like neurodiverse, disabled people, like all of the sort of like minority groups that like Altiora like tries to target. So like hit me up about like anything I can help with.
Fantastic.
We certainly appreciate you coming on.
We'll be sure to steer people your way if we come across them. I think that is a nice opportunity to transition into our hastily assembled Tier 2 Tweet of the Week.
Indeed.
Which is, we are just going to take an opportunity here to plug, of course, it is the Altiora Community Pride Cup coming tomorrow. So our Tier 2 Tweet of the Week is going to be the Altiora Gaming tweet on that. I believe we are just hopefully getting that loaded up quickly. There we go. Yeah, go and check that out, happening over the next 2 days. And for those matches that aren't streamed, they should be available as a VOD after the fact. Don't forget to go and click the handbook link there at the bottom of the tweet that you can find where to donate to the, I believe it was the LGBTQ Freedom Fund. All incredibly good stuff. Firinn, thank you again for joining us. Again, it's been super fun.
Thank you for having me.
A pleasure. Absolutely a pleasure. Thank you for volunteering. Everybody else, thank you for coming to watch. Always nice to see you in chat. Those of you that are regulars here, really appreciate the support. If you don't already, please follow the podcast on Twitter and subscribe on YouTube. Follow all our links. All our nonsense on Twitter is down below the boxes. Thank you to Glitch City for, again, every week letting us use her remix of the King's Row theme. I'm sure she has no idea that I thank her every week. But I do anyway, because I feel like I should, because she's a good person.
We're not stopping. We're not
cooler
stopping.
than us. Glitch is too cool to like watch our podcast or know that we're thanking them. So.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's going to be it from us. We'll see you next week with even more news and etc. from Tier 2 and beyond. Thanks a lot, everybody.